for jumping on. Can't wait to hear some of your tips on the business development side of things. And you've had some journey from radio hosting to recruitment to rec tech. So we're going to dive into that. But do you want to introduce yourself, tell us what you're up to, and give us some insights into the journey?
Yeah, mate. I'm one of the co-founders of Attract AI. We've been running the business now for a good number of years. I think like 5 and a bit years, and it's been a journey from services into tech-enabled services into now a pure product play. But it's a recruitment product effectively to help companies unlock the passive candidate market. We're now starting to do more in agencies and utilizing it as a business development tool as well. And then radio, as you mentioned, that was an interesting time in my life. Recruitment for years, maybe 10 years. So I feel like I've done plenty in my 38 years.
Yeah, it must help, we were kind of chatting about just that, being able to confidently speak on the phone, the radio voice. It's can you go into like different voices? Do you do that when you're when you're prospecting?
Mate, what's funny is I got the job in radio because I may have been a bit of a pest in my younger years, and I used to get kicked out of this nightclub in Brisbane relatively consistently, and like they'd make me sit outside on the front steps and drink some water to just calm down a little bit. And in the process of that, I used to talk with the door guy, and then I used to harass him, and we became quite good mates. And then he got a job at Nova when Nova launched in Brisbane. And he, one of those days when I was drinking water on the front steps, he was like, "Mate, why don't you do this? You can talk shit fluently. I think you'd be well positioned to work with us," which is a weird way a weird person to profile and offer a job. But I was pretty thankful. So that's how I ended up working in the radio space.
Nice. When I was doing a bit of research, obviously just going on to your LinkedIn page, you got like Mike again. Is that a reference to Fred again? Is it?
It was horribly embarrassing. It is, unfortunately. I'm a big fan. I know he's to an extent, as he's become more popular, he cops a bit of flack. My wife teases me greatly about my love of Fred, but I've got like this kind of like shadow group amongst LinkedIn of some closeted and some more open fans of Fred again, and whenever a new set drops, we're always sharing stuff back and forth. But also it's in reference to me harassing people on LinkedIn, and I just imagine when people see me pop up into their LinkedIn inbox, they're like, "Oh, it's Mike again. Great." So I thought that was marrying the two together made sense.
I'm a massive fan as well. I actually, if you can see in the background, I went and bought like the
pads.
I tried to like set it up, and it was probably the wrong time. I was kind of starting off routes, and it was like, I'll buy this and learn this, and this can be a distraction. I set it up, and I went into it, and I was like, this is a course that I'm going to have to do over a few years.
Yeah, it looks like a lot. Mate, literally on the drive over here, I was listening to his recent set that he dropped on that rooftop. I went to his gig on the Gold Coast. Legend, very talented guy.
Yeah, it was away. He's very interesting. I like as his case study, and I think even Toby that we both know as well. Done a post one day, but the way he creates a community and a following, and if he's coming to Australia, like he puts up a video and the people are like attracted to come and do that. It was similar times of Taylor Swift, and Taylor Swift, obviously sold out, but he was selling out these secret pop-up events within a few seconds, and it's good. Like that has really interested me from a marketing perspective, but also being able to generate that demand straight away. And what this topic is about is more around that business development, how to open doors and approaches, and it's quite an interesting one. I feel even like your company name Attract, it's quite an interesting shift. I feel where a lot of, from a recruitment's perspective, was all going, cold calling, outbound, and you would never really get somebody coming to you and going, "Hey, here's a few jobs I haven't spoke to you before." But if you can like take some of what he's doing and that kind of mindset and that approach, and with this podcast, with this LinkedIn, with social media, where whatever you're doing, and you will find that you can attract it. And I do see like that shift from marketing to sales being like grey area now. Have you experienced any of that yourself, or what's your kind of as a bit of
my hot take? to your point, when he teased the Australian tour, I think he was on a plane and he was taking photos of the wing and saying how excited he was to come. And I don't have Instagram, but that same kind of like weirdo group of LinkedIn / Fred Again appreciators was like pinging me screenshots across the board, being like, I think he's coming. And yeah, that was super exciting. Man, I'd love to be able to emulate that in the B2B SaaS space. I don't know how achievable that is, but man, I reflect back to one of the first conversations that we had around like differentiation, and I think recruiters, for a long time, maybe forever, the differentiation is really hard, and you see lots of individuals and then companies, and when they come to market, and a lot of it is differentiation is around like, we care about our candidates and our customers. Like, it's a bit of a throwaway line, but it is quite challenging particularly when you're new and coming to market, how you do position yourself and present that kind of unique value proposition to the market. And I think building brand, whether it's consistent posting or podcasting or sharing of memes, all kinds of like weird and wonderful creative things. I think anything you can do to make yourself a little bit more like memorable and get some attention is going to benefit you from an inbound standpoint. But even when you're doing outbound and prospecting in the traditional on the phones or harassing people via email, as we all do, I think that is really like positively influences engagement rates for sure.
Yeah. You kind of have to do a bit of everything, don't you? There's no one way, fixed way that works. And for an approach, do you have a go-to approach, or is it, you know, as you say, you might find a mutual connection or a mutual interest, and it might be like, do you want to come on my podcast, or what is your kind of go-to? And you don't have to give away all your tips.
Yeah, I'll try to work out which ones which ones I don't. I talk about it a fair amount. I'm big on like being weird, embracing you're in a weirdo, and like authenticity. If there was ever a moment to lean into that, I think it's now with this kind of AI wave that has come through, and it's really commoditized a lot of, particularly written comms, what that looks like, and it's really dumbed it down a lot, I think, and people chase efficiency over effectiveness, I'd argue. And so if there's ever a time to lean in and really get a strong sense of like self, and then work out how you can then articulate it or communicate that across different channels, now is a really important time to get comfortable with that. And I don't know, I think it's just experimentation. I think it's just being consistent and then working it out on the fly. I think like even when we were trying to get our little podcast chat thing that we do every now and then, Hot Sauce, up and going, there was so much time spent around like the name and what we're going to do and who we're going to talk to and how we're going to distribute it. And it kind of just got to the point where it's like, shit, we just got to do it and then work it out. And the first ones, we had some good friends of ours like Eden and Ben Tanswell and a bunch of others who suffered through those first few episodes, and the editing was shit and questions were shit and distribution engagement was shitty, but you just kind of just have to do it and then work it out on the fly. And then ultimately, hopefully you land in a place that is beneficial for both you as the creator of that content and also your audience.
Yeah, it sounds a bit like where we are, that we're still at the shit questions, the shit distribution of quality. So it's all a game. It's enjoyable.
Yeah. And then when my wife catches me on the couch looking at YouTube videos, I just tell her that it's research, that I'm researching how to make our podcast better and generate more engagement.
Weird and wonderful. I like it. I like the way you put that. Do you remember an outreach or approach that stands out to you?
Yeah, but probably none for the right reasons. I remember when we first started the company and I was picturing like an exit in 12 months for billions of dollars and trying to work out what color supercar I was going to buy. I sent a collection of messages to potential acquirers, basically saying like, hey, you're likely going to acquire us one day, so it would probably make sense for us to get to know each other now. So it's a nice process once it's happening. But like I did that to like Paul Bassett from Seek, and he replied to me, and then he introed me into the business, and I've had some conversations and maintained those relationships over time. So it as stinky as it was, it actually worked to an extent. he's probably felt sorry for me, but even like sympathy, shit, I'll take it. That they're weird ones. Other ones of just like being persistent, and instead of just being like, hey, did you see it? Hey, can we have that conversation? Just getting weirder and weirder. Sending of gifts, sending of weird jokes or stories or images, like photos taken throughout the place. Like I had this one guy, I'll name him actually, Nick, from Jumbo Interactive, a lotteries platform company. I harassed him for a while. He wouldn't get back to me. And then I used to see Jumbo, it's like a type of skip bin around town. So every time I was in like some weird part of town, I saw a skip bin with Jumbo on the side. I just kept sending him photos of skip bins. And then eventually he wrote back, I was like, mate, why do you keep sending me pictures of bins? And I was like, because Jumbo. And he's like, that's stupid. But then that created the platform of which we've had the conversation, and now we chat semi-regularly. Like, he's a great fella. So yeah, I love that kind of weird shit. I think like it makes it fun for me, and I'm more inclined to do the follow-ups, and then ultimately it does drive mostly better conversion downstream.
As you said earlier, with the more generated stuff, like the more human personalization, the personable human just in general, but also being that weird, wonderful thing, it turns it into a game where you're going...
It is a game, yeah.
It's a game. And as you keep going, if you're putting these weird, wonderful things out, because you come back to it and you might say it a week ago, and then you're following up and you're going, did I really say that?
Yeah, mate, definitely. There's another tactic. My wife doesn't get mad at me about this, but she says, says that I do it. She's highlighted it to me as kids. If you're struggling with sales, I'd have kids and try and make sure they're cute kids, and then have them around a bunch when you're having calls. Because often with decision makers, they will be of age where they've got kids, or like younger kids or older kids. So you can either speak to like, oh, you've got a 3-year-old, I got a 5-year-old type thing, or man, I remember those days all those years ago when blah, blah, blah. And then I weave it into a lot of my stuff of like, yeah, no sleep, and oh, this was funny, or this was cute. And you could say it's a sales tactic, but ultimately what it is I think in COVID kind of made this more natural, but it's like trying to connect as humans and innately humans. And again, if we talk about AI and that kind of coming through, it's something that can't be taken, like replicated or taken away from you. And it's me passionately talking about something I care deeply about. And in doing so, I kind of expose a bit of myself as me, Mike, the person, not the guy trying to sell software. And that moment can kind of not disarm necessarily, but it just can change the interaction of like two humans talking to each other about the thing they're most proud of versus, this kind of like tactical challenger sale. Like it gets a little bit kind of too combative maybe, like they're trying to work out what angles I'm trying to run and I'm trying to work out angles what I'm trying to run. I can just be real and honest and be like, oh, excuse me, get on the call and be like, oh, I'm coughing because of daycare. My little one brought that home, man. I feel so shitty this week. Sorry about that if I keep coughing. And then it's like, oh, yeah, I got kids too. And then next minute you're just two people. You might as well be standing next to each other at the park with your kids playing. Like it just, yeah. So get kids, have kids, or create a fake kid and then talk about them a lot.
It's relating, isn't it? And as you say, it's when you've got something to relate, and it takes a conversation away from maybe both your end goals. It's standing in a park. You don't go up and go, hi, Mike, I hope you're well. This is our services.
Yeah.
You know, and it's interesting, like what we're seeing as well, more about people want to have this one button where you send off and there's the perfect thing. Even as AI advances, which it will, still feel like sending a really weird picture or be interesting or interested, like genuinely, like if they're posting about something and you can meet them halfway and say, I've done this and that, you know, you're relating on a higher level, and maybe like an easier way to actually go in, are they interested or not, because you're qualifying, you're not saying like we're both going into this, so it leaves that whole process in a bit more of an open conversation as well.
Mate, and I think like in the past when I was working in agency, because I worked in agency for almost 10 years, and in big shops, there was a strong focus around KPIs of have you reached out to this many people or had this many qualifying calls or whatever. And I hated it because a lot of it felt very forced. And I probably wasn't old enough or experienced enough at the time to try and flip it and turn it into a game. Like I hadn't worked that out yet. And I used to just sit at my desk and feel the weight of those, like on a Friday afternoon, knowing that I was going to have to print out my activity for the week and sit in a boardroom with my manager, like see his face. And he'd get up me about not doing the activity, and that, all the weight of all of that, and I'm sure that happens today, then led me to like typically inactivity, or if I did, it was like very forced. So yeah, the trying to trick yourself into making it a game and making it fun, definitely, I found that I do it more naturally now. But one thing, sorry, I forgot where I was going with that. One thing that I think is important is to ensure that your top of funnel is really fat. Like you've got to, you're working hard at like mapping the market, or you commit a solid amount of time to do the work. Because if I'm going through and I've set out a block of time to be doing some outreach, some sales, if it's too forced, if I can't make it work, I won't send a message. I'll save them in the system and then set a reminder to come back to them. And they'll always be in the back of my mind as I kind of start navigating, and I'll follow them, for example, so that increases the likelihood I'll stumble across some of their content and then I might see my angle. But I don't try and force it. So I'd rather go through like 100 people to message 10 that I feel really naturally about messaging versus going, cool, here's my 10, and then really like butting my head up against the wall trying to work out what my angle is. If the angle isn't there, I reckon like bin it, like come back to them or have them in some kind of like follow-up workflow or reminder for you. But like find those ones where you see the profile and you see your angle, and then it just it just flows out of your fingers, versus the ones where you're like trying to be too creative or smart, or you're just doing dumb shit like, congratulations on 5 years at X company, you must be stoked. Like, shut up.
Yeah, the commission breath is like, I see you've got 5 jobs. Can I have them? Like,
yeah, that kind of stuff.
Do you find there was a time, we talked there about at the start you didn't maybe have that to turn it into a game, or think of maybe it's a confidence thing, but was there a turning point where you were going, okay, do you know what, I've tried everything, I just don't really care anymore? Or how was that process for you? Like, how did it come from the rigid, like what you would imagine people want, and compared to what people actually want?
Funnily enough, you touched on it, and it was the thing that unlocked the radio career for me. So when I started driving around the cars for Nova, we used to do this thing called crosses. So at the time they were called Sandmans. They were like fancy Holdens with stickers and stuff on them, and we'd drive around and give away Mars bars and cans of Coke and movie tickets and stuff. And part of the role was when you got there, you had to ring in and record a cross, and you'd have to say like, hey, it's Mike, I'm here down at Grinstead Park and I've got XY to give away. Come down in the next 30 minutes and we'd love to see you. And I was so shit at that because I was so stressed about fucking it up that I'd like script it and I would just get all tight and I had to keep recording them. And then they banned me. They pulled me off air and were like, no, you're not allowed to do them anymore. And then I had to go around with like people that were good at it. So they had to like redo the rostering because I was so bad at it. And then I was like, basically like, fuck this. I don't want to do this. This is shit, because I wasn't good at it. And then one day, and I had like a foot out the door. And then one day, for whatever reason, somebody couldn't record it. So they got me to do it. And at that point I was like, I don't care anymore. Like, I'm out of here. This doesn't matter. And it just came out really normally and naturally. And then off the back of that, then I ended up like a few months later getting a gig in Adelaide to host a night show during the week, an on-air role. So in that scenario, it was definitely around like not caring. But I think once you get comfortable with not caring, and again, I think some of this comes with age and experience, like whatever, like if the person thinks I'm an idiot, if like, I don't care, there's no skin off my nose. Once you kind of get to that place, I think it unlocks a lot of your ability because you're not limiting yourself.
Yeah, I read the book of The Soul Art of Not Giving a Fuck, and that, yeah, and I think there's a second one, Still Don't Give a Fuck or something. And it's really quite interesting. You know, when you're pushing, you're forcing, you nearly have that commission breath or smell of desperation. I need a job, I need a placement, hit my target. When you don't care and it's like, I'm not even going to hit threshold, so I'll just get on the phone and it's like, I don't even know if it's coming into Christmas. I don't even know if I want this show. Like, and then they all like get three, and it's going, how the hell is this? It's like the energy, or I don't know what it is, but it's the tone, the excitement, it's the rushing. When I remember starting out, it was the pitch. The first minute you'd pitch, and you were like, "This is what I do. This is everything." And everybody's, "Whoa!" Like, I can't wait to get off this call. Or if it's Friday, maybe I had a beer after lunch, and it's going, you know what?
Yeah.
Nice stuff.
Yeah, when Robert Half, we had this year, we have like President's Club, which is like the global recognition. And there was one year where I think 3 or 4 of us from our team went across to Vegas because we were all in the top 3 globally for technology. I think I was Rookie of the Year, and then 2 of the other fellows were like in the proper rankings. And so we came back and we thought we were eating a bit. We thought we were the shit. And then the market tightened. And then we started second guessing ourselves. And then we went to zero. Within 6 months, we sucked. We were so bad. And then, then we basically like hit the bottom. And then we're like, fuck this. Like, we can't go any further south from here. And then launched again. That was, that was like a really tough, like exciting, awesome, really, really bad, but then a good rebound. That's kind of it. I think you need to go through those experiences. There's not necessarily a shortcut through them. You have to suffer through it and learn your lesson properly, and then build upon that.
It's confidence, isn't it? You coming off a big quarter, you're going into the next quarter, the conversations, and then if you take a break, it's going, right, well, I don't have that flow. What am I doing again? As you go on holidays for 2 weeks, you come back and you're like, what do I say again?
Another thing, while we're talking about the BD stuff, which I'm huge on, is referrals. Makes it sound a bit stuffy, but like some of the content stuff that we do I'm very active in building relationships with people in an authentic way, not for an angle or for benefit, but because I want to be across the space. I want to know what's going on. I want to know how I can be helpful. I want to know trends. And so I'm very active, like with you, harassing all of the people. But I really work hard on leading with value. I work really hard at being authentic and transparent and open about the things that are good and the things that are bad. But then on the back end, I feel like I get a lot of value, sometimes actively seeking a referral or asking somebody for an introduction, but often it just comes back in naturally. And we talked before about like the mix. There's a multi-channel approach always wins, and then constantly kind of looking at the mix of what is performing and then leading into that channel and then revisiting. So it could be like outbound is delivering really good value. It could be inbound leads from the content you're creating. It could be the posting of job ads, seeking of referrals. Like there's so many different parts, like channels that you can utilize, in-person events. And there'll be periods where one will perform better over others, and then lean into that. But I think it's important to constantly revisit which channels are performing and recalibrating of where you're spending your time, because the same channels don't perform in the same way consistently. You constantly need to be looking at the mix and reprioritizing your time.
Yeah, I think they really do evolve. You see some of these courses or whatever, somebody's going, right, well, quick question, has this opening rate this year? And then next year, nobody opens it. Some of these stuff, like, it just goes so quick. And I think I love that about selling. It's never, right, I've got my script that's going to take 10 years and I'm going to just use this for the next 10 years, say the same things. It's like, I need to change this, need to try new things. But even how we got speaking that day was quite bizarre, because I was on a call speaking to James Jennings. We started talking about Attract, and then you popped up and you were speaking about something else, and we were like, let's just jump on a call. And it's strange for me kind of transitioning from the more of the regular recruitment consultant. We don't speak to all recruitment consultants because they're our competition. Whereas going into the rec tech space, it's like, hey, you're doing something, what are you doing? Let's have a chat. And it's like, then you get the referrals, you should speak to them. You've done it for me a few times. It's this give again, and then you might get something, you might not, but who cares? It's like you're also just building your networks and stuff, and I think that longevity kind of plan just works far better.
It just is a good way to do business. It's a good way to send positive like vibes out. I'm not super like that way inclined, but I feel, yeah, if you doing good by people and actively being helpful and being fair and thoughtful, and it'll come back. Equally, if you're being a prick and cutting corners or trying to be sneaky, that will definitely come back to get you. One thing I want to talk about, I'm actually keen to talk to you about this, particularly with floats. Reverse marketing. When I was in the seat, I loved reverse marketing. That was basically all I did. Proactively source candidates and find somebody that I thought was interesting and valuable, like marketable. And then I would get to know them, work out how best to position them, and then take them to market very deliberately, approaching like hiring managers or TAs, recruiters, to try and pitch them in. I'm guessing with floats, that was your jam as well. But what I'm seeing is like not as many people in market are doing this as I would expect. People would call it like that's like the old school way of recruiting, and we're trying to be better at that. Lots of like we want to be better at that. What's going on? I feel like an old man on this rant, but I kind of want to have this chat.
It's funny. Every call I get, like, we can. First question: do you have a reverse marketing strategy, or do you do much of it? We do, but we want to do more, and it's without fail. Like that is the answer. I had a few like at the start of floats, we were going around interviewing people, and we were asking them who, talk us through the last three new terms you signed up, new clients you won, and it was 90% of it was reverse marketing. When I set up Cloud Recruit, it was. I think I done 2 cold calls, and this is like, I'm going to not go into this, but I done 2 cold calls in the first week, and then everything else was referrals and reverse marketing, because we were dealing with like really good engineers. And if you think about, if you have a role and you've got 3 people, one person gets the role, you've got 2, like, I don't want to say this, but it's like a product, and I'd just come out of tech sales, so I was going, right, well, if I had 2 slide decks, how do I get that to the right personas? And it was going, not like solution selling, so to speak, but it's going like a lighter touch. We might be even existing clients who we haven't spoken a while, and I'm not looking for jobs, but this person was exceptional, and it's like trying to come with solve that problem rather than going, okay, here's my awards, this is what I do, this is my specialism. It's more around a lot of the training I went through was about like how can we solve the problem, and it this way you kind of position it as well. Like a lot of what I see is people think that reverse marketing or floating or speccing or whatever it is, it's like just job chasing. But if you're targeting accounts, or if you're going like with a marketing email, it's to build that brand, not necessarily I have to place this person with you, but even an idea of this is to pay the people I work with, this is my specialism, and it gives a point of reference. Like a lot of the time what we see is, okay, we've sent Joe at 200k, but they come back, can't actually pay 100k with 150 for this budget. You're opening a conversation with further down the line, but it's everybody has their styles. I don't think there's, we talk about cold call dead, all this things, everything's dead at the minute, but it's going, you kind of have to have a bit of a different flavour with everything, and if it can work into your workflow, and if it adds that 1 or 2 placements a month or extra, then it's worth doing. But what I've seen is there's people that do it really well, there's people that don't believe in it, and I think it's like anything. It's like some people could do a day of cold calling, but if they don't have their opening, they're not going to think it works, or if they're not confident, or it's not their style. But when you crack it and it becomes part of your workflow and you start making money off it, it's easier to kind of put more time and effort into it. So it's a bit of a weird one. Like everybody has a different way of looking at it. What I was really keen on doing was stepping away from unsolicited CVs. I never sent any unsolicited CVs, so I used to send a blurb. So it's kind of going...
And that's it. It's not that. I think there's that negative view that it's flicking CV, like somebody's CV unsolicited to 1 million people without getting their sign off. And like that's bad practice. That's not what we're talking about. It's about, being very thoughtful, strategic, considered in who you're approaching, what the messaging is, what are the pain points you're selling into.
I look at it sometimes as well as, say, right, you work with a CTO, say, for example, in the tech space, and they move 2 years later. But you know a lot about the teams that they build, the personalities, the culture fits that they typically work for. So a lot of it's about the person. We're matching people to people. So if I speak with, like, Joe today, and I'm trying to send him to Michael here, the CTO, I'll have a bit of a better story. And so talking about stories about people, like, if we look at movies, songs, all these things are all stories. And it's like when we get the person that we're wanting to represent, if we can share the story in a way that it resonates with the person that they're hiring. And it's not just, I've got a software engineer and you are hiring a software engineer. It's I've got a software engineer that has similar interests, has done a similar project. Like, you can get so many different levels and into the depths of it, and it's connecting them dots. But it's a skill in itself. It doesn't come easy to everybody, but it was one of my main approaches to anything.
Yeah, that's what I found. If I was excited about the person, like, I wouldn't just take anybody to market. Again, I think doing it for KPIs, doing it because like, for me, I did it because I knew that's how I perform the best. Because I met Sean, I'm like, fuck, Sean's a legend. He's got great skills. He's worked for great companies. I know there's going to be XYZ people that are going to be excited to potentially meet with him. And then when I wrote the copy of the anonymized summary, or when I made the phone call, I was speaking with genuine passion and interest, not just like generically kind of, selling shit. The other thing I think about, and this counter to what you were just talking about, but I think risk of like commoditizing candidates or productizing them. If I just think of like a retail shop, right, where you've got a shop with nothing on the shelves and people come in and you're like, what do you want? And they're like, well, what have you got? And you're like, well, we can get whatever you want. You just tell us what you want and we'll go get it. Versus like coming in and there being a collection of like really high quality items with lots of detail and context around them, and then they can like pick them off the shelves. It's like, it makes sense. You've got a product, you take that product to market, and you should be excited about taking that product to market, and then that'll generate more outcomes versus like, selling your ability to find unspoken product. It just feels weird and backwards.
I am going to steal that. I'm going to steal that one. That analogy, it's very good. Like, the shop is always an interesting one, isn't it? It's like more from a follow-up perspective. I walk into the shop and somebody's, there, and you keep coming back every day or every couple of minutes going, do you need any help? Do you need any help? Do you need any help? You're going to be like, walk out. But I'm going to say that one, right? So we'll use that again. Which gives me like into the segue into the follow-up, because a lot of what I'm saying again is like, somebody sends one and it's going, okay, now we wait for all the jobs to come in, and we all know like how important the follow-up is. If you were in your first year or in recruitment, so to speak, a lot of the people we try to focus on this is like in your first 9 months, for example. So is there anything you would say to your past self, to day one, to be talking about like that very thing, how you're approached, but also like maybe the follow-up side of things?
Again, in my experience, like creating real reason, even if you manufacture the reason for following up, is helpful. So instead of like that fucking nothing email that you send of like, hey, Sean, I sent you that summary, not sure if you got a chance to look at it, please let me know. Like, sending those is depressing, and the recipient of them, it's depressing for them, and the likelihood of it doing anything is zero. Very, very low. So it's like, in those scenarios, I always try and be creative and think of it like a meaningful reason to follow up, or deliberately withhold some piece of information or some piece of value that I can then have like an excuse, like a real authentic excuse to come back in. If I was to float a candidate, for example, and I hadn't heard back, what I would probably do, and again, this kind of is like a very natural thing to do, but often isn't considered, I'd call the candidate knowing that I'd have some follow-ups. I'd be like, hey, how's it going? Just wanted to give you an update. I've floated into XYZ companies. Is there any updates on your end? Or what did you think of this company? Anything in particular that jumps out at you? I need to get back in touch with them, and like lean on the candidate and kind of like crowdsource some of that information. And then from there, like post that call, you've got something, hey, I was just on the phone to the candidate and they mentioned that they actually love Canva and have, they built it, their current CV or their portfolio was utilized sending it. So here's a link through to the portfolio that they've built utilizing the product. And then that's like that was obviously a very perfect manufactured one, but it's very like truthful and honest and real, and value. There's value as part of that. That's typically what I do. Like, and in doing so as well, like you're being a good recruiter from the candidate side. You've got a candidate care call. You're keeping them updated. So like you're being smart about the task you're performing instead of like being like, oh, I got to call the candidate for candidate care because that's a KPI that I need to achieve. And I'm just like, hey, how are you? Good, great. Hang up, tick, on to the next task. It's like, how can you maximize the value from that interaction to then use that as like a resell back in over the top, to hopefully create opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. And like, so before we kind of like wrap up and stuff, can you tell me a bit more about Attract and what's, the goal is, where the vision, what do you see it, where see it going, what is the plans, or if there's someone in their first year, how would it help them in their role?
And finally, interestingly, maybe when we first started, man, this is a risk of turning into a very long rant here. When we first started, it was to take some of the learnings of good agency recruiters and productize. So some of the learnings I've observed of good agency recruiters, productize that and put that into the hands of internal talent acquisition teams. I think that initial vision has matured now, and to an extent, we still have a number of like customers in the internal TA space, but we are doing more with agencies and RPOs, a solid amount as well. And a lot of it now is like trying to enable some of this activity of like, oh man, you've got your ATS, right? That's your core recruiting system where the majority of activity occurs. Or documented activity occurs. But sitting upstream from that is arguably where most of the meaningful work occurs. And that is conducted over a number of disparate systems with no real documentation occurring. So then typically with limited attribution, candidates appear or customers appear within the ATS, and then they're pushed kind of through a process. We want to create like effectively like the equivalent of the ATS, but focus exclusively on customer and candidate leads. So there's both documentation, but efficiency in how customers and candidates are engaged with, and then really clean attribution back into the applicant tracking system. So then you've got more predictability as to like what the fuck is happening in the top of the funnel, how you're converting, what's performing, what's not. And this is kind of new, and we're kind of trying to work it out at the moment. We feel there's a big opportunity is in this kind of candidate utilization space of like when you do get to a great candidate, via outbound or inbound or whatever channels, even like rediscovery back into the ATS, how do you get the most value out of that candidate? And in doing so, deliver a really good service to them by getting them in front of as many good fit employers as possible. So there's this interesting problem that no one's really solving for, where there's all these kind of disparate data sources, both candidate and customer data, but how do you pull it all together and connect candidates with customers and customers with candidates in a really seamless manner? Because so often I feel this is like, if we were to talk to the pain point, it's that fucking pain where you're on LinkedIn and you go, oh shit, Sean just got a job with Mike. And it's like, I spoke to Sean 2 months ago. I speak to Mike every other week. That was an opportunity for me to make, but for whatever reason, I've missed that. And then somebody else is potentially benefiting off the back of that. Whereas I was really well positioned to make that placement and make that revenue and build that brand myself. So it's really trying to solve for that pain point to make sure we're giving recruiters every opportunity to capitalize on the network value that they've created for themselves.
Nice. Cool. Well, look, mate, I think we can wrap that up. I think I was really enjoyed that conversation.
Good man. Appreciate you, Sean.
Cheers,
Thanks for having me.
Sweet.